Hey, what's up, guys? It's Corey. Just wanted to talk through some kind of my experience related to community college versus a four-year school and some of the disadvantages, advantages of each, and kind of what my experience was and how it can help you as you kind of decide whether you want to go the community college or the four-year school route. So, kind of the big advantages that I came across. When I first went to community college is the low cost. So I was paying, this was back in 2014, was when I first started. I was paying $2,000 per semester, so all the minimum wage dollars from working at McDonald's were going in hard. So very, very cheap. Like I could save up $2,000 working at McDonald's, not only in the summers, but just 20, 30 hours a week while I was in school, taking 15 credit hours ish, 18 credit hours some semesters. But even making $7.25 an hour at the time, I could save up a lot of money and still be able to pay tuition every single semester. Next one, so I knocked out a ton of prereqs while I was there, and that's another huge advantage of community college is just the ability to knock out prerequisite programs before you go on to a bigger school. So let's say maybe you're doing a like what I did sports medicine in a four-year school. A lot of times what you can do is knock out those math, those English kind of baseline credits at community college for a much cheaper price per credit than you can at, let's say, a four-year school, especially if it's like a private four-year school and that sort of thing. At community college, I met a lot of teachers that had truly done the job. They didn't have PhDs necessarily, but they had master's degrees and typically were adjunct instructors or had while working the job that they were teaching, or had at least done the job at some point in time. I was in school for like fitness and recreation management, so a lot of my professors had done some kind of sport marketing roles. One of them that I had was a golf pro, and he had done like a lot of business, setting up his basically shop with being a golf pro and everything that goes with it. I had another that was a coach at a local college, and he taught at that as well and did some adjunct work. He wasn't a professor, economics teacher that had worked in the business world for years, doing that sort of thing. So you get a lot of teachers at community college that aren't just PhDs, that haven't just simply done academia forever. Smaller class sizes. So in community college, I typically had like 15 to 20 people in a class. If you had a bigger lecture hall class, like anatomy and physiology might be one of those. You might have a bigger class size, but even when I went, I still didn't have that many people in one of my A and P classes. So much easier to talk to the teacher, just a lot better environment for learning and not having massive class sizes with tons and tons of kids. And then the final advantage I'll kind of highlight with community colleges is there's a lot of two-year programs that you can get into that are pretty well paying right off the bat. You've got the PTA program, physical therapist assistant, nursing programs that are only 2 years, automotive technology, radiology techs, and typically all four of those jobs you can come out making at least 50 grand right out the gate doing those jobs, which for 2-year education isn't bad at all. And obviously you'll make more as you progress. But I met a lot of people that kind of started off doing that, and they either remained doing that or they continued to push onward, continuing to either go on to four-year school after doing that for a bit, or they just kept with whatever 2-year certification that they had, whether it be PTA, nurse, or whatever the case. Moving on to disadvantages. So really the biggest disadvantage that I came across was that some four-year schools, they require you to take their core courses, and sort of force you into doing more school than you would have expected. So I was in the athletic training program at the four-year school that I went to. That required me to like interview for that program and that sort of thing. So it was a little bit more selective, we'll say, and that's not to make it sound like I'm anything, you know, phenomenal or whatever the case may be. It's more so they were just selective in what they would take. So they would only allow you to take their like basic athletic training course. Certain other core courses related to that, you know, if we're talking their therapeutic exercise course, athletic injury assessment, and that sort of thing. All of those courses, even if you had taken them at a prior school, or maybe you were in another athletic training program at a different school, you still have to take those over again at the new school. So that can be disadvantageous as far as trying to transfer over some credits, depending. But the basic courses like the English and the math and the science, those you can transfer over. It's just like the no shit, real important courses for this program, they wouldn't let you transfer over. So you do have to be aware of that with certain programs. So another disadvantage I'd say for community college, beyond the athletes who play at community college, it's not really a diverse kind of place. So like it is in that you'll have diversity in like who you meet, but the people there are typically more like localized to the area, because the community college, most people will get out of the high schools around the area and then they'll go to the local community college. So if your goal was to like kind of meet a lot of different cultures and people from all over the place, like community college may not necessarily be the thing. Beyond the student athletes, like we had English athletes in community college and whatnot, but yeah, that is one disadvantage I'll say. So my recommendations, honestly, if you're trying to figure out if community college is a good idea, I recommend going to community college to knock out the prereqs first. If you're planning on going to a four-year school, and typically you can do like what I did and just work at the same time and avoid having a ton of debt. After that, if you want to go on, unless you're doing one of those 2-year programs like I had said, if you want to go on, your best bet is to try and find like a cheaper state school and really work those scholarships and that financial aid. I had an ROTC scholarship, so when I went to 4-year school, at first I didn't have it, but it was around my third semester that I was able to get that turned on, and it really helped immensely. But if you can take as minimal loans as possible, that would be fantastic. Like I said, state schools for your 4-year time are the move. In Brockport, so I went to SUNY Brockport in 2017. I was paying about $3,500 per semester. It did go up a little bit towards like $4,000 towards the end, but still pretty doable, and not like a absolutely insane amount like some of the private schools. Another school nearby that's private that I looked at going to, when I did the math on it, I was going to owe like $250,000 by the time I got out of there, because it was like $20,000 a semester tuition, and that's just tuition, not taking into account all the other stuff. So I would avoid those private schools if at all possible. And then the final question to ask yourself is, what is the highest level degree you actually need for what you're trying to do? if you don't need a real expensive master's degree or whatever the case may be to do what you want to do, then don't get sucked into that. I need to continue to get multiple degrees hype. It is like a thing nowadays to where higher and higher levels of education are needed, but you kind of have to do the cost analysis and the time that I'm going to take to do this master's degree, let's say, or whatever degree it is. What benefit is it going to get me on the back end, financially and like job satisfaction wise? Is it going to increase my salary by $20,000? Then maybe it's worth it. Is it going to increase my job satisfaction to where I'm doing something I really want to do? Then maybe. The other thing you have to be careful with that though is what's the ratio of, money that I'm making versus like the money versus the hate the job ratio. Ideally, you want to be at a point where you're doing something you're passionate about as well as making money at it. But if you're doing something you're passionate about but you don't make any money, you very, very over time start to resent that job a little bit. And then vice versa, if you're making a ton of money but you hate the job, it's also not a recipe for a long-term solution. So just a few student loan facts. So the average time to repay student loans clocks in about 20 to 30 years. And some of these are obvious, but high loans cause delayed home buying. Obviously, career choices that are steered toward higher paying professions. So like I was saying, one that maybe you have no interest in or you hate. Postponed families, as well as stress and anxiety. So if you can avoid loans at all, that is absolutely the way I would go, and that I have gone. Alternative options to traditional school, just to give a few highlights on that. I don't know if they had this when I went to school, but like online accelerated degree programs, so earning your degree quicker through that, and decrease costs with in-person college attendance with these accelerated online programs. Typically you can get them done obviously faster than 4 years, but obviously you're not going to get like the regular college experience of living on campus and all of that, but you'll save all of that money with the housing costs of living on campus. So that's an option. And the other thing is just trade schools, plumbing, electricians, lineman school, all those things can sometimes and a lot of times be a fantastic option as opposed to going to college. So and kind of the final thing I'll talk about is living at home while you're in school. I lived at home for the first couple of years in community college. I was able to do it for a while. It was advantageous while I was in community college. I definitely started to get sick of it towards the end. I was 22 when I got out. My first place I lived was an apartment with two of my other buddies in downtown. It was a good time. But yeah, living at home can be advantageous for a time, but it's not something I'd recommend for the long term. I went to 4-year school after community college, and I was out on my own living with a couple buddies, but not at home for the remainder of school. And it definitely is something that helps your development. I do believe that your development does become somewhat stifled if you continually remain at home. But just my 2 cents on that. But overall, guys, those are my recommendations. I just wanted to make a little video touching on community college versus a four-year school because I did both. Just to kind of show you that community college can be a great avenue to go to. I'm definitely obviously biased towards it a little bit, but I just wanted to shed some light on how advantageous it can be. But like, comment, subscribe, guys. Let me know what else you want me to talk about. Appreciate y'all.